Thank you. So I'm going to just tell you about the Petca program, which stands for Paediatric Endocrine Training Centers for Africa, of which there are two centers, one in Nairobi and one in Lagos. I've subtitled the talk, Securing the Future of an Educational Gem, because I think I will try to persuade you that this is the best educational activity of the whole of Espe, and the most productive and the one most worthwhile to keep going. So the journey so far started in 2008 when Zeb Hochberg and many others in Espe had the very novel idea of setting up this program. And the first center in Nairobi was established in 2008. And since then, there have been two phases of students graduating from this course of 15 months, with a total number now of 45. And then in 2012, a second center was established in West Africa, based in Lagos. And so far, 3 groups of students have gone through that center, totaling 19 graduates. So we now have a total of 64 graduates from this program. How productive has this program been? Well, clinical services have been established in 14 countries to provide services in endocrinology and diabetes against the background of a lot of general pediatrics that these pediatricians have to do. Several of the fellows who graduated from the program are now actual tutors in the program themselves. And the whole idea of the program is eventually this would be self-sufficient, so we are well on our way to doing that. As you well know, a highly successful Espe society has been established now for the last 5 years, and many of the members of that society have come through the Petca program. And I hope many of you have seen the wonderful newsletter that Espe produces every 6 months, and this is the very latest one, and I'm sure it's on display around here in the meeting. What it will tell you also, which I've highlighted in this slide, that as part of the Petca program, for 9 months, each fellow is obliged to undertake a research project back at their home institution, supervised by a tutor. And out of those projects, we currently have 90 publications, of which 52 are related to endocrinology and diabetes. For example, projects in growth, puberty, thyroid, adrenal, diabetes, DSD, obesity. And these are in peer-reviewed journals. So that's 52. And I would challenge the Education and Training Committee to look at all the educational projects in Espe and see how productive are the publications from other activities within the Education Committee. I know it's quite difficult to be comparable, but please have a look at your programs and see whether you can match this productivity. And as you well know, lots of these projects are presented in meetings like this, at ISPAD, and of course in the society itself, run by the Espe. What about the future? Well, self-sufficiency is the important project that we now must work on. A lot of the funding for this came from the World Diabetes Foundation and Espe, of course. The World Diabetes Foundation also recognized that this cannot be funding in perpetuity. So that funding for Nairobi finishes in 2016. And Nairobi are working hard now to make it self-sufficient. Similarly, Lagos will now need to apply for their second tranche of funding in January in order to renew that grant. So we are very careful to make sure these applications are as excellent as possible. We have committed, together with ISPAD, to continue the presence of tutors, international tutors, to do targeted teaching throughout the course, and also to provide external examiners at the end of the course. Because both courses, particularly one in Nairobi now, is almost ready to be recognized by the university as a formal university qualification. And therefore, it's important to have external audit and examination of that process. And we have committed ourselves to doing that. What about research opportunities? It's quite clear to me, looking at the research projects and meeting these students, that some of their projects were absolutely excellent. And given the facilities, that research could be developed further. And we have now liaised with the Petca program through a program that's happening in Cambridge in the university in Cambridge, which has been established for a long time in terms of projects in Africa. There's a Cambridge Africa Advisory Board, which I'm a member of now, and just recently, last week, they have advertised 25 PhD studentships for people from sub-Saharan Africa. It's a 4-year program, 3 years of which will be spent in Africa in the home institution doing the project in the field, exactly what is a microcosm already of the research projects, and 1 year then will be spent with a supervisor in Cambridge. Those of you who are interested, the website is shown there, www.cambridge.africa.cam.ac.uk, and you will see the information provided. And in addition, I'll be very happy to provide any further information. Now, this is a lovely photograph I thought I'd just finish with. This is the latest group who graduated recently from the centre in Lagos, and you can see they are a very happy bunch of people. And of course, the local organizer is Abiola here, who's obviously very proud of the success. So Abiola is the organizer in Lagos, and Thomas Nguiri is the organizer in Nairobi. Now, I should be followed immediately now by the fellow, a graduate of the program, to talk about what it's been like, to actually give us the truth of what it's like to be a fellow on this program. And I think this illustrates the problem we have, that person, Dr. Abok, is not here. Why is he not here? Because it was very difficult to get funds to come here. And then finally, we were trying to help him with that. Finally, it was something we could not do anything about. Spain refused to give a visa to somebody coming from Nigeria. And I think this is very sad, and it's something that obviously we need to look at in future and clearly apply for visas almost 3 years in advance of where you want to go. So he kindly sent me his slides, and I cannot speak as well as he would normally speak, but I'll try to do my best to represent his cause. So I had called my title Educational Gem, and he has called his title Pubertal Development at Petca, a Gem Experience. And what he's getting at is shown in the next slide. As one would expect, he has done a lot of general pediatrics, highly experienced, very little experience in pediatric endocrinology. So he was explaining that anything to do with endocrinology in children was looked after by adult physicians looking after diabetic children. Very few of the DSD cases were looked after by pediatricians. Some surgeons were seeing them. Rickets was looked after by a nutritionist. Growth monitoring, as one can understand, was centered more on weight and nutrition and very little on height. And a period of childhood for him was changed when he went to Petca, when he had an induction of puberty and transition into adulthood by the course he went on. And so this is the group that he joined, 5 of them training in Nairobi. They had clinics, and he was quite nervous of being introduced to pediatric endocrinology, which he'd never really faced before. But he had, with his colleagues, faced the challenges of doing the course with Petca. On the top there are the tutors that they were working with. The organizer of the course in Nairobi here is Thomas Nguiri. And some of these, on the next panel, you will recognize the faces of some of these people. These are the tutors from Petca and Espe who obviously taught during the 15 months of the course. And the supervisor for this particular student was Dr. Katja Conrad, shown there on the left. And he talked about the clinics, and those of you who've been to the Nairobi Centre will recognize that the clinics are held at the Gertrude Children's Hospital, also the Kenyatta National Hospital and the Aga Khan Hospital. And they also had experience working with diabetic nurses out in the field, the diabetic camps, and plenty of experience that way. What was the benefit? Well, his research project was quite an interesting research project, and sadly, he should have been presenting the poster of that project here in Barcelona. It was on vitamin D status in children with sickle cell anemia. And I hadn't realized this, that vitamin D deficiency relative deficiency biochemically, is much commoner in children if they have sickle cell disease. And so he studied more than 100 children, got some very nice data on vitamin D levels, and tried to correlate that then with the clinical aspects of the disease, the number of sickle cell crises, bone problems. And so that is certainly potentially a paper that should be published. He has also established contacts, as one does in this situation, with other colleagues, and is able to relate now with difficult cases, sending these cases, the information around the world to different people in Espe to ask for advice on management. He is now running his own Paediatric Endocrinology unit in Jos, in Nigeria. He's teaching medical students, and he's running clinics. He's now introduced growth monitoring into his well baby clinics. And this is obviously a major development. And also he's taking on a very challenging project of setting up a newborn thyroid screening program in Jos in Nigeria. So he's going to be a very, very busy person. And he says gracias, and I also say gracias.